Good morning and welcome to episode 55 of the Jaguar Report podcast. My name's Gus Logue. I'm joined by my co-host John Shipley. John, we just witnessed a shellacking about 2 days ago as the Texans handed a big loss to the Jaguars 37-17 in the second official game at Everbank Stadium. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I didn't predict the Jaguars would win 40-3. So
40-10 is what someone predicted.
you said 40-10? Oh, I thought it was 40-3. My mistake. I didn't predict the Jaguars would win.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing good. It was the second most embarrassing thing I've seen over the last couple of days. The other one was yesterday when you just absolutely stuffed Gene Fournette in a locker. Gus went up to introduce himself to people in the media workroom and goes up to Gene, accidentally calls him Gary Smith, same person, etc. And Gene goes, "I'm Gene," and Gus goes, "I know who you are. I know what you are."
Yeah, Gary was just right in front of me. I can't get like his arguments about Taylor Swift out of my head, I guess. Yeah, that meter room, we've said it before, it's kind of like The Office or like just another like
Was I wrong?
There's some laughs in there, but yeah, I was just trying to introduce myself.
You're doing a good job, guys. Yeah. Was I wrong about the Office comparison?
No, not really. If anything, it's like something more hardcore than The Office. Not actually, but
the British Office. But
yeah,
it definitely I've covered every home game but one since 2019. I had COVID in 2020 when they played the Browns or the Steelers. One of the two. I missed one of those games. And other than that, I've been at every game. And this was probably up there with the Chargers loss in 2019, where they just kept sending Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry on seam routes over Quincy Williams, and Todd Wash did nothing.
Yeah,
this is right up there with that in terms of embarrassing losses. It was. I mean, you can't put lipstick on this pig, I don't think. What? Is that the first time you've heard that?
Sometimes I haven't heard some of your catchphrases or whatever. And
yeah.
Catches me off guard. Lipstick on a pig? I don't know. But could you say the Texans were putting lipstick on the Jaguars? No, that doesn't make any sense.
No, like, I hated that.
It was so deflating is like the word that came to mind for me. Like, it's just that the team had such high expectations, like the highest expectations among like team history. And so there's been like other embarrassing losses, but the other embarrassing losses haven't come like with these high expectations necessarily.
Yeah, like the context of the game, rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, even though both are obviously good at what they do, they're still rookies. Missing 4 starters on the offensive line, missing 3 starters in the secondary, and they're starting linebacker, and it literally could not have mattered less.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I thought too much about the injury report because it's definitely a significant and impactful injury report. But
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, the Texans have given up 11 sacks in the previous 2 weeks. Like the Jags are just bad. Like it mattered the previous week against the Colts. Like those injuries mattered. So
okay,
I think the Jags were just bad. I mean. We'll obviously get into all of it, but for instance, you have Shaq Griffin playing pretty much every snapper for Derek Stingley. I know they threw on him a decent bit. How many times did they test him downfield, which was kind of his weakness in Jacksonville?
I would say probably 0.
And to me, it seemed like we just jump right into the offense. It seems like the way the Jaguars are calling the passing game, especially this week, but in general, is like both from a play caller perspective and from a quarterback perspective, like they do not trust their protection at all, which fair, warranted, but it just doesn't seem like they're dialing up, the deep shots that they did at times last year. Trevor's interception, it was obvious that he was impacted by the pressure, just made a bad decision. It just doesn't seem like, Trevor's trusting his offensive line, and it definitely doesn't seem like Doug Peterson and Press Taylor are trusting it either.
Yeah, I mean, from the first week, I think it was kind of maybe not obvious, but I thought the offensive line was kind of like the reason that the Jags weren't throwing it deep more because they had a plus matchup on paper with their receivers against like the Colts undrafted cornerbacks outside. So I was like, the fact that they weren't trying to test them all game maybe they didn't trust their offensive line. And then like just the same thing is rung true in weeks 2 and 3 as well. And I mean, Trevor just like doesn't have enough time to get to like third and fourth reads, which is part of the reason he's such a good quarterback. Like the elite guys are just great processors. And I mean, Trevor's still processing quickly, but like just doesn't have enough time to like have every option. So because of that, the coaching staff is trying to like come up with plays where there's like 1 or 2 options and you can get the ball out quick. But then that's just kind of like still shriveling and shrinking the offense.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, they have a Ferrari at quarterback and they're using it like a Honda Civic. Like he definitely does. I mean, his passing map, it was like a Brock Purdy, Jimmy G level, And I agree with you. I think it's because of the offensive line. I think they know that their interior is leaky, and they have a rookie right tackle who, he had a better game, but obviously he was going to have a better game. He wasn't going up against Chris Jones. And if did you catch any of Kansas City, Chicago?
No,
Kansas
I saw
City.
Taylor Swift. That was it. Eating ketchup and maybe ranch.
Yeah, Kansas City did the same thing to Darnell Wright that they did to Anton. They were literally just putting Chris Jones over him and saying, go ruin this dude's confidence for the next month. So
yeah,
so Anton, was far from the only one. But I mean, Doug put it plainly yesterday. Somebody asked him to evaluate the offensive line. He was like, it was okay. And okay in coach speak is it was bad,
Yes.
And he basically pointed out, he said Walker, Luke Fortner, and Brandon Sheriff were their 3 consistent guys. Obviously, Walker has been. I thought we were watching the game. Fortner didn't have a bad game per se. Like he gave up a leaky pressure on a play action. I can't remember exactly which play it was late in the game, but he didn't have a bad game. And then Sheriff, he honestly played a decent game, but he had 2 penalties that would kill it. Hands to the face on 4th down. And that, to me, kind of sums up their offensive issues right now. I mean, I tweeted out earlier, like their late down and early down splits on offense are insane. So on early downs, the Jaguars are number 19th in EPA per play. Obviously not great, but not bottom 3 in the NFL like they are in general. The number 4 in success rate, number 21 in drop back EPA per play, number 6 in drop back success rate, number 9 in rushing EPA per play, and number 9 in rushing success rate. And then you look at late downs, 3rd and 4th, they are 31st in EPA per play, 28th in success rate, and then bottom 5 in drop back and rushing EPA per play and success rate. They're just terrible on 3rd down. And I really think a lot of it, like you can't even point to one thing. Like sometimes it's protection, sometimes it's untimely penalties. Brandon Sheriff's on what should have been a 4th down conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's drops. Calvin Ridley had 2. I think Trevor leads the NFL in drops this year with either 9 or 10. I think I saw stats like a little over 10% of his passes have been dropped.
That's crazy. That's a good way to put it in context.
Which is wild, dude. It's absolutely wild. Like they had drops issues last year, of course, but it seems like this year, like the drops are more damaging. They're coming in more critical situations.
Yeah, there was another side I saw that the Jags have like the most EPA lost on drop passes this year, and it's like the most in the past like 4 seasons. And like a big part of that is like you were just saying, a lot of them have been end zone looks and like drops to like that would have been touchdowns. So not only are they drops, but they're like these late down drops. I mean, these costly situation drops.
And I'm pretty positive the drop stats doesn't factor in like the failed like toe drags either.
Yeah.
So it's been not great. Okay, so see, PFF has them at 9 drops on 113%. 113 attempts. So what percent of 113? So, okay, I was wrong. It was more like 8% of his passes, but, good, still not great. Still almost a tenth of his passes, are being dropped. And Sunday was a big example of that. You get Calvin Ridley on Blake Cashman and, downfield, great throw, should have been a touchdown. And I don't know how he drops it.
Honestly, like my take is that you can't like pin this game or this season so far on any one player or coach like at all. But like the take is that like it kind of starts with Ridley. Like literally it started with Ridley in this game because the Jags got like forced to 3 and out on Houston's first possession. and then they drove down the field, and then Ridley has this drop from like the 20 or 30-yard line is where it was thrown from, and then they're forced to kick a field goal, and that misses, and then it was just like a snowball effect from there. So like he like literally was like the first one to kind of mess up, and it just got worse. But then also like he's like the only significant offseason change. Like this team is like sick of hearing about like, oh, last year's comebacks and this happened last year, so how do you feel now? But like the only thing that's changed is Calvin Ridley, and like for the entire team to see like this guy who's supposed to be like not necessarily their savior, but a really big impact and like fresh face and whatever, to see him like not doing what he was supposed to do is probably like puts a damper on the whole team. And then lastly, like one thing we haven't talked about yet is how Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram had like 1 or 2 combined targets in the first half, and then they got a little bit more involved in the second half. But I almost wonder if like part of the Jaguars' plan was to like feed Ridley early and then like see what defenses were doing, and then like kind of like put Kirk and Ingram not like into the game plan, but like mold the game plan more based on what defenses were doing with Ridley. But like now that Ridley isn't performing as expected, like the team's confidence I think might be going down, and then like the team's offensive strategy is kind of like not where they wanted it to be.
Yeah, I mean Ridley is, we talked about it, some me and you yesterday. My working theory is that Ridley has never really had an offense funneled through him. 2020, you can maybe make the exception because Julio was hurt a lot that year, but he was pretty clearly the number 2 in Atlanta for most of his time there. And right now his target share so far he's seen 27% of the targets. The highest he saw in Atlanta was 25.8% in 2020. At 15.2% as a rookie, 17.7% the next year. So they're clearly, making him the focal point of the passing game. It was the usage of Kirk and Ingram, has been curious. Sunday especially, it seemed like once the Jaguars started funneling their offense through them in the second half, crazy. It started the offense, started looking much better. And they had the 1 combined target in the first half and 13 combined targets in the second half. And I asked Doug about it yesterday, and he said their plan was to get them going early, which okay, like that didn't really show, in their execution, but it does seem like they're at least cognizant of the fact that, okay, maybe we need to reel this in a little bit. But I did a story, today on Doug talking about Ridley's last 2 games, and here's a piece from it. The last 2 weeks, I've seen Ridley catch just 5 of his 15 targets for 72 yards. It's a 33% catch rate and 4.8 yards per target. As a result of 4 drops in 2 weeks, he now leads all NFL receivers with 10 targets or more in drops and is number 5 in drop rate at 23.5%. It has just been an ugly, last 2 weeks. And I think you can chalk some of it up to, obviously, coming back, from being a year off, etc. And I also think some of it, like I said, is I kind of think this is who he was in Atlanta. He was a guy who, if you funnel him targets, he doesn't have the surest hands, in the league. Like, he'll have drops now and then, and he's not like a big contact guy, which I think we've kind of seen so far.
Sorry, you froze. I didn't know if you're still talking.
My bad. No.
I think that's totally like a fair point about how he like wasn't the focal point. And like I told you yesterday about how like another thing is that he was able to like get away with his slim frame more in Atlanta because like Julio is this freak athlete with a monster frame. So he'll be able to like kind of do a little bit more of the bully ball. But like in Jacksonville, Ridley, Zay, and Kirk are all like 190 to 200 pounds. So they don't really have like that type of player that we were talking about that in the offseason. This is like a offseason as a possible like day 3 pick is like someone who can win like jump balls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like a better Kevin Austin, basically. I don't know. But
are you inferring they could have drafted Michael Wilson from Stanford instead of Tank Bigsby?
What round did Michael Wilson go?
After Tank Bigsby, a couple of picks after.
So in the 3rd round? I thought he was in the 4th.
It might have been the 4th. Tank was like the very tail end of the 3rd. And I mean, that's another thing, speaking of the offense, is they're getting 0 contributions, outside of Anton from the rookie class. And I got killed by some people for saying it, saying you don't draft for need, you don't draft for immediate impact. Look at the Detroit Lions. They're all four, they're a similarly touted, playoff caliber team, and all four of their first, top 100 picks are putting up crazy contributions, crazy stat lines. Like it's not true that you have to draft for 4 years in the future. No, if you're picked in the top 100, you should be expected to contribute something as a rookie. And it's not like to the fault of Brenton Strange and Tank Bigsby because outside of week 1, it's not like they've done anything wrong. That was obviously when Tank had his no good, very bad, awful week. But
yeah,
I think, in total, like you look at the plan here, I put out yesterday, Tank and Brenton Strange combined for 30 snaps, 4 touches, and 17 yards against the Texans. Yeah, Tank had a 1-yard touchdown that he vultured from ETN. I think he's the leading scorer this year with 2 touchdowns, neither of which was a touchdown that really took much. I feel like Steve Connor probably could have scored them. So it just the way this team was built, it is not like that. It does not look like pretty much any of their plans or predictions internally from the offseason, especially on offense, are coming to fruition. And I don't know, man. Somebody tweeted at me and said, since Urban left, the drafting's been going downhill, and maybe it's time to start a dialogue because the 2022 class returns are not good. And the 2023 class, like they picked 13 players. 5 of them are seeing playing time. And the only one that's seeing significant playing time is Anton. And
Anton is the only rookie to get more than 30% of snaps in week 3.
Yeah, so Tank and Brenton Strange aren't really doing anything. You see Abdullah, I think he had like 11 snaps. I think 8 of them were in like run defense snaps. So, and then Tyler Lacey is getting whatever snaps that Angelo Blacks and
that's a name I haven't heard in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Tyler Lacey.
That's right. So, I really think when you get to the offensive issues, it ranges from obviously the Ridley addition causing some issues so far, the offensive line, not getting impact from the rookies. I think you can point to literally anything and everything other than the quarterback.
That's right. Yeah. Good ad. Because I was going to say Lawrence's interception was at least his week 3 interception. Like I would put that on him. He was getting pressured, but it was like not a good decision and not a good throw. However, like that was really like the only objectively poor throw that I've seen from him the entire season. Like he's trying to elevate the offense. Like you see the way he like puts in the basket, like with the Ridley dropped touchdown on Sunday. He's doing everything he can. And like the problem is that it's just like that's not working. So he's trying to do even more than he can, which we saw in like week 2 when he tried to take the zone read out and lost 3 yards on the goal line. So like he's starting to press just because like nothing's working. But like everyone else just needs to chill out and like said it before. Like the best that Lawrence plays is when he's just like in a groove and like playing smoothly. And like we just haven't really seen that at all, except for the second half of the Colts game, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with. I thought week 3 was one of Lawrence's better games, like this season, if not his life. Like
He's been good all season.
Yeah, no, he's been I don't care. Solely Sparks, whoever disagrees, I don't care. He's been a top 6 or 7 quarterback this year. Like he's at the table. I know the production isn't there. They went 9 quarters, I think, without a passing touchdown. It's not him. It literally is everybody but him, which is probably the first time in franchise history they can ever say that about the quarterback. But like there were genuine takes after the game saying that C.J. Stroud was more impressive than Lawrence. 40% of C.J. Stroud's production, and we'll talk about this more, came on 2 busted coverages that shouldn't have happened. So yeah, Stroud I thought had a good game. He looks really good for a rookie. Lawrence has played like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and my genuine take is that if you don't see it, you just don't know what you're seeing. And I'm not trying to say like anybody's a dumb fan, but like Lawrence isn't like if you put out a top 15 reasons why the offense is struggling, Lawrence comes at 15th or maybe 16th. Like, he's not even on the list, you know? And I'm just like, watch the games. What people were literally, I saw a conversation somebody was having that he stared down his target on the Ridley drop. And I'm like, one, it's a linebacker on Ridley. And two, the linebacker had his back to him. It's like, if you throw a touchdown pass and it's dropped, why is there any dialogue at all about the throw decision?
I don't know, man. Did you see the one about like how like Ridley was running a dig, or no, Kirk was running a dig, and he was like, it should on that same Ridley drop, and he's like, should have thrown it to Kirk, even though Kirk was not at all open.
Yeah,
like yeah. All right, I'll do some kind of film room this week. We're before we forget, we're gonna do a slight schedule change and try to do podcasts on Mondays going forward, Mondays and Fridays rather than Tuesdays and Fridays, just to get you guys game reactions and game reviews sooner. But then also I'm trying to post film clips on YouTube on Wednesdays. So I'll put together a little compilation of like why Trevor Lawrence is still great or just is great.
You're gonna get me in my Garfield era.
What?
I hate Mondays.
Oh. No, I like it because then we get it over with.
Yeah.
Hey,
this isn't the get it over with to me. This is the highlight of my week. That'd be incredibly sad if that was true. It's not. I mean, I really feel like there isn't much more like to say about the offense. Like, they're really bad on third downs because they keep making these backbreaking mistakes at every position other than quarterback. And to me, the quarterback's playing at a near elite, if not elite level, and everybody else is playing, to me, relatively, average to below average. I wouldn't say everybody else. I think Evan Ingram's played really good. He just hasn't been utilized. I thought Kirk had well. Yeah, I thought Kirk had a good second half. What was it? The stat that you had, like Agnew and Farrell and Strange had 6 targets in the first half.
Yeah, it was Agnew, Farrell, Strange, and Tim Jones had 6 combined targets in the first half.
They shouldn't have 6 combined targets in a game.
Yeah, and then Ridley and Etienne had like 11 combined, and then Ridley and Etienne. No, sorry, yeah, Ingram and Kirk had 1 combined target in the first half. So that's going to be probably like a big thing I look for in the Falcons week is like, do they start the game off like trying to feed Ridley in like a revenge game for him since they're playing the Falcons?
Okay. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, dude. I realized that yesterday and I was like, oh man, like what does that even mean? So like, are they going to try to feed Ridley in his revenge game and like try to keep making the offense go through him and then through everyone else after? Or are they going to do more of what they did in the second half in Houston, where it's like we're running the offense through Ingram and Kirk like we did in the second half of last season? And then hopefully like Ridley will find success off of that if that's what they do.
Yeah, because I think that's what we all assumed, it would be, is that it'd be the same offense. They're just, slotting in Ridley for Marvin Jones, but it clearly has not gone that way. So I think the offense will get better.
See, the thing is, like, the offense is the same as it was last year. And, like, even Calvin's role is pretty similar to Marvin's. It's just that they're featuring that role so much more than last year. So they need to dial it back based on, like, people like Kirk and especially Ingram not getting enough targets, but also B, like, Ridley kind of struggling out of the gate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then I guess the last thing to really hit on the offense is I thought Etienne looked, pretty good. I think Etienne has honestly looked fantastic, like, especially last week.
Yeah, I found a stat where his explosive rush rate, just rushes of 10 yards or more, is like it's half this season what it was last season. But like other than the explosives, everything else is still there. I should look up like what his success rate is last year versus this year because that's probably improved. Even if like the 20-yard chunks aren't there as consistently as maybe we would expect based on like how good of a workload he's gotten to start the year.
Yeah,
he has been good, and you can kind of see like the improvement that he's made like with his technique and like squaring shoulders and kind of like hitting holes faster.
My final question, I guess, for you on the offense is Like, what can you really do, with the offensive line until Cam comes back? Like, is the only other real option, put Shatley in at left guard? I thought Doug kind of plainly said yesterday that, Ben Barch is not doing well, so is that really the only thing they can do on that front until Cam gets back? Because I'm more than assuming you can go ahead and bet the mortgage on this one. When Cam comes back, he'll be at left tackle and Walker Little will be at left guard. I've seen people say put Cam at right tackle, put him at left guard, put him at long snapper, and keep Walker at left tackle. I don't think that's going to happen. So what would you do over the next 1 to potentially 2 games, until Cam's back on the line? And me personally, I would put Shatley at left guard.
Yeah, I would either do that or at least be ready to if Barch ends up starting the Falcons game, and then if he's struggling against Grady Jarrett, which probably good chances, then they'll throw in Shatley. But yeah, I think Anton will continue to get better week to week. So until he gets a little more experience and until Robinson comes back, they're going to be kind of almost stuck in the same offense that they are against. It's just try to feature Engram and Kirk more than you feature Ridley maybe, but they're still already doing plenty of screens and quick concepts and different types of stuff that you'd normally do to help out your offensive line. They've already pulled out most of the tricks.
Yeah, I guess it just leads to the question of you literally knew this was the offensive line situation. But somebody asked me yesterday when I made that point about Strange and Tank, okay, well, who would you have picked who would have made an impact? Literally Osiris Torres. It's literally a NFL starting guard for a team that needs a starting guard on its line. People make it way tougher than it needs to be. Gus, do we have anything else to add for the no good offense?
Nah, we can move to defense.
All right, so we're going to hit a break. You're reminded that Trevor Lawrence is good. The Jaguars offense is not. We'll be right back. All right, Gus. To the defense. It appears the Jaguars defense is not the 1985 Bears, contrary to previous reports.
I don't know. Mike Caldwell still might be him, though, because let's break down these 2 big plays from the Texans real quick. CJ Stroud hit 2 really long ones to Tank Dell. There was a 46-yarder in the first quarter, then a 64-yarder in the fourth quarter. So on the first one, they were both blown coverages and miscommunication. Miscommunication was said by every other Jags coach and player in terms of the reason for the explosives given up on defense on Sunday. So the first one, which was the one where Rayshon was sprinting backwards, correct?
Yeah.
So that one at first I thought was an inverted Tampa 2 where they were having Tyson Campbell and Darius Williams, their cornerback, play what the safeties would usually do, which is those 2 deep half safeties. Because before the snap, we saw both Rayshon Jenkins and Andre Sisco fly up into the box, and there was basically everyone. It looked like they were in the box.
It was a 9-man box, wasn't it? And the only 2 guys who weren't in it were the outside corners.
Right. So then after the snap, Rayshon immediately starts sprinting backwards, in the middle of the field. So that's why I thought it was inverted Tampa 2, is because usually when the Jags or any other team run Tampa 2, you see the middle zone defender, which is usually the middle linebacker, turn his shoulders and almost run back to cover deeper than he would in a normal cover 2 zone. So when Rayshon was doing that, I was oh, this is just a super funky inverted Tampa 2 look. But then based on the miscommunication and looking at the tape, it seemed there was I don't think it was Tank Dell who motioned, but it was probably Dalton Schultz or tight end who motioned across the formation. So then Rayshon, who was not responsible for the middle Tampa 2 coverage shell, but was actually responsible for the deep third in the cover 3 zone shell. So he was originally responsible for that deep cover 3 middle shell. And then when Schultz motioned over, that's when Rayshon ran up because he thought his responsibilities changed. Then Schultz went back across the formation and Rayshon just stayed up in the box because I guess he thought that he wasn't going to go back to being that deep safety. And so maybe it was on Sisco to remain that deep safety after the first original shift. But whatever the matter was, it was a cover 3 defense. And then like Tank Dell was able to just like run past Darius Williams on the right and then like into the wide open deep third zone.
Yeah, it definitely. And also credit to CJ Stroud. Like it seemed like he got the snap off, pretty quickly when he saw kind of the miscommunication. I mean, I have it, I have it up here. 114 of the Texans' 280 passing yards, roughly 40% came on those two plays alone. So that's really almost half their passing game production came on two plays. So it definitely, like you said, was that miscommunication. The safety coming down. I'm surprised that those, I guess, communication issues are happening because like these guys, they've played now 20 something games together, in the same system. So you wouldn't think that's creeping up in, week 3 of year 2 together. And then you have a breakdown for us on the touchdown dagger.
Yeah, I mean, that one was just like Darius Williams and I forget who the other player was on that side. It might have been Trey Herndon. It was probably Trey Herndon. Like they were just the two outside cover guys, and I think Darius's guy like went into motion. It was basically just like another motion that happened, and so there was two guys that were like confused about what their assignments were, and so like basically both Darius Williams and Trey Herndon took the guy who went on like the short outside route, and I guess it was probably Darius Williams just based on what it looks like that should have actually stuck with the deeper inside route with Tank Dell. So it was just like, again, like pretty similar, even though it was man versus zone, like both examples or both plays were like just two specific coverage defenders like getting mixed up with each other's responsibilities.
Yeah. And so like just putting it all in context, you have two blown coverages that lead to 2 Texans touchdowns and almost half of their passing game yardage. You have a touchdown drop that leads to a missed field goal. You have a blocked kick that leads to a Texans touchdown. You have a 85-yard kickoff return by a fullback where they had 5 missed tackles on it, and it clearly was not their day. Like that number of bad things stacking up on top of each other is absolutely insane to me.
Pretty much everything that went wrong could have. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like that's probably the reason for like my Ridley like snowball effect take. It's like I don't know what else it could have been. Someone poisoned their pizza at the team hotel. They're the home team, so hopefully not.
I will say this. I feel vindicated. Dameon Pierce was having a mid-off with Devin Singletary. New hot take. Devin Singletary is the Texans' best running back. Go ahead and put that on your sheet. Dameon Pierce, 14 carries for 31 yards, and that includes a 10-yard run. So 13 carries for 21 yards outside of his best run. Yeah, he had the 1-yard touchdown that I could have walked in. Devin Singletary, 9 carries for 41 yards. Pierce averaged 2.2 yards per carry, and he's not had a good year run the ball. So I mean, you look at the Jags, like defensive, numbers, like they are an elite, right now, run defense at this point in time. Number 3 in rushing EPA per play, number 2 in success rate. Then, passing game to number 23 in drop back EPA per play, number 14 in drop back success rate. Better numbers than last year, but obviously still small sample size. We'll see what happens after they play the Buffalo Bills, what those numbers look like. Mm-hmm. But they're definitely a team that is built, around their run defense right now. And I think that was another problem is they couldn't generate any negative plays in Houston's passing game. It felt like everything Houston did, even if only 2 plays were – 3 plays. I think Nico Collins had like a 20-yard catch too. It seemed like outside of 3 plays, everything Houston did, it was just like a timing-based, offense, and the Jaguars could not get them off rhythm at all. Jaguars recorded 0 sacks despite Houston – being among the league leaders in sacks given up through 3 weeks, even with no sacks given up in week 3. Josh Allen, according to Next Gen Stats, was the only Jaguars front 7 player to record more than 2 pressures. Him and Devin Lloyd were the only ones to even record multiple pressures. I know PFF has Trayvon down with 2. I trust Next Gen Stats a good bit more than PFF. So,
yeah.
I mean, the Trayvon Walker, you and I said last week, previewing the Texans, like Trayvon needs to have like a game, against the Texans, or the conversation will get awkward. And I think it's gotten there, dude.
Yeah. like 2 backup offensive tackles, not 1 but 2. And like Stroud did look pretty poised and like I mean, since we know that quarterbacks are or sacks are a quarterback stat, like Stroud did do a good job a couple of different times of like stepping up into the pocket, but like man, like Trayvon didn't show anything as a pass rusher. Like he continued to flash extremely well in the run game, and like he's definitely a key part of like the Jaguars' first and second down awesomeness on defense. Uh, but then like third down comes, and we don't really see that much. And should I bring up the Aiden Hutchinson stat now?
Yeah. So I will concede, after years of dragging him, the Jaguars should have drafted Aiden Hutchinson. I said after the game, imagine how different the Jaguars defense would be if they just drafted Hutchinson and then just kept Arden Key. And somebody said, I died in a Hutchinson hill. Correct. I was wrong about Hutch. I'm not paid to draft football players. Like, it literally doesn't matter if I'm wrong.
Right.
Like, the football team is who needs to be right. And they to me were not. And I'm not sure I see that changing. Like, even before you get into it, over the last 2 seasons, Taven Bryan has more sacks than Trayvon Walker. Taven Bryan has more sacks this year. Like it's going to be 2030, and we're going to be hearing about the excuse that he didn't play edge at Georgia. That has to factor into drafting him. You know, like that.
Or it has to factor into like where they're playing him. It's like we saw like the stuff last year with like Darius Williams moving from the slot to the cornerback, and it's like, oh, like once Mike Caldwell like figured out his unit, it's like now like you pretty clearly like signed Darius Williams to play in the slot, and then like Shaq Griffin just like basically got sent home, and so then Darius started playing outside because you needed him to, and then he played better than outside because that's where he's always wanted to play. So like I wonder if something happens with Trayvon eventually where it's like they finally move him inside, and like they're moving him inside like less than 5 or 10% of the snaps. So like at least like try something, because the Hutchinson stat that I have is Hutchinson has 15 snaps playing rushing the passer from like inside the offensive tackles.
Yeah.
He has 15 pass rush snaps and a 21.4% pressure rate, which ranks 10th among all NFL defenders. Trayvon Walker has 2 such snaps and 0% pressure rate, or 0 pressures on those 2 snaps. But then even on the outside, like Hutchinson, it has 20 pass rush snaps and a 40% pressure rate, which is 10th. And I mean, small sample size through 3 weeks. But then Trayvon Walker has 57 pass rush snaps, which ranks 8th in the league, and only an 11.3% pressure rate, which ranks 65th. So like Hutchinson is better both inside and outside. He's getting more opportunities inside. It's pretty baffling from like the Jaguars.
And the only thing I can say, this isn't to justify it. I mean, this goes back to Trent Baalke did a bad job with the pass rush this offseason. He did a bad job setting up this pass rush this offseason, and I think that's why Doug he gave like a Mitch McConnell freeze after the game when asked about the pass rush and had to like really collect his thoughts. To me, it's not because he doesn't know the answers, because as an NFL head coach, he can't say the answer up there at the podium. He's not going to throw his guys or his people under the bus. But Trent Baalke did a bad job building this pass rush this offseason. He did a bad job, because the solution to moving Trayvon inside would be, okay, you need somebody on the outside. You can't put Caleb Chason out there, obviously. You can't put Yasir Abdullah out there. When DeJuan Smoot gets back, you like Smoot's better inside too. So, like, I had somebody replied to me, and I was like, well, they're getting Smoot back for whatever it's worth soon. And I'm like, is it worth that much? I did the Family Guy Brian thing where he's like, that's better.
That's good.
It's help, but come on, like I just, and the thing is, everybody literally predicted that would be the outcome. There was a reason they got asked about the pass rush nonstop all offseason, all after the draft. So, but again, it's not my job or your job to figure out what the answers are. It's our jobs to say, when something's not going right. And clearly their pass rush plan has not gone right. I think Josh Allen's had a really good season, but to me, pass rushes are yet to rush as a unit. And if a defense ever has like just one guy surrounded by a bunch of Jags, for lack of a better term, just the guys, it's super easy to, kind of not shut him down, but to limit his impact. And I mean, Josh Allen had 3 quarterback hits and 5 pressures against the Texans, and you wouldn't know because he was the only dude getting back there. And I still can't fathom the Arden Key decision. It had nothing to do with he wanted to play more and he wouldn't have signed here for any money, like I've seen some people suggest. No, if they literally offered him what the Titans offered him, he would be in Jacksonville right now. So it was a very, very poorly constructed pass rush. We're seeing that show up, and the fact that people are like, it'll get better when Smoot and Devon Hamilton come back, it will, but look at the 2 people you're saying, are going to save the pass rush. It's a inside-out sub-package power rusher who's coming off an Achilles tear and a nose tackle who literally has only been known as a pass rusher for a 6-week stretch of training camp against a bad offensive line. So,
and now there's like a mysterious back injury, and we're not sure when he's coming back.
Exactly. So, help is not on the way for the pass rush. I think it's sound all the alarms, try to make some kind of trade at a deadline. And I think I don't like throwing the word bust around, so I'm not going to throw it around. But I do think you can say with confidence the Jaguars picked the wrong player, number 1 overall last year.
And a number 25 overall, probably. 26 overall? 24 overall?
27th overall? I don't know. Both linebackers they picked that year are kind of
well put.
Muma didn't have a great game.
Both linebackers, yeah. I mean, I was looking back at the draft history today, like since 2000, even including 2021, like the only day 3 player who's gotten like any kind of like significant runtime or snaps is Luke Farrell, and he's like commonly known as like an Urban Meyer draft pick.
Great family.
I remember saying like really early this past offseason that like Trent's day 3 picks were going to be a really big part of the offseason, even if we didn't really like think about it or remember it, just because like they need to get depth from somewhere, and like they haven't. Like they haven't gotten depth from anywhere, so now they're spending their 2nd and 3rd round picks on depth.
Yeah.
And like their plan for the pass rush very obviously was Trayvon Walker, and that was a terrible plan and hasn't worked so far.
Yeah, it 100% was, and I really don't think there's anything else. I guess my final hot take is after watching the game again, going through the tape, I was really impressed by Bobby Slowick, and I think he has put together a better offensive plan, at least last week, than the Jaguars did. Like, because you can't use the offensive line excuse. The Texans' offensive line, even when all their starters are available, is probably so-so. So Texans had a bad offensive line, and we're still able to, play relatively clean football. So my hot take is right now, Bobby Slowick is ahead of the Jaguars play callers.
Just Jaguars play callers as a group.
Ahead of Press Taylor, ahead of the Jaguars brain trust on offense.
No. I was even trying to dig you like that.
We're not going to give credence to the debate of who's calling the plays. There's not going to waste oxygen there.
Texans are set up so well between Scott, whatever his last name is, on offense, D'Amico Ryans being head coach and the defensive play caller, and then on both sides of the ball for players like Will Anderson Jr. and CJ Stroud look as good as pretty much anyone in the entire draft class, like maybe outside of John Carter.
They hit home runs on quarterback, head coach, and have one of the best young pass rushers in football. They're going to be a problem for years.
Yeah, like happens quick, but they're like maybe like up there right with the Jaguars for like best teams of like the future for the AFC South.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Gus, do we have anything else on the defense?
No, sir.
Okay. We're going to break one more time and then come back for our game balls question mark after that loss. We'll be right back. All right, Gus. It's always tougher to pass out game balls after a loss. I don't need the game ball article for JaguarReport anymore. My man Jackson DeLulo does. I'm bad with pronouncing last names, but it's always tougher to pass them out after a loss. I don't think it's necessarily that tough this week, though, so I'll go ahead and give you mine, then you give me yours. Offense, I think it clearly has to be Travis Etienne. it was obvious they were trying to establish the run trademark early on, and ETN, like we talked about it, how he struggled, the running game struggled, not him, to break off long runs in the first 2 weeks. I mean, he had a much better game, I thought, this time around. It seemed like they were committed to him, and like it's obvious that like Tank Bigsby's only role in the offense is as a goal line, touchdown vultures. I mean,
that's it.
Yeah, it's Travis Etienne's backfield, obvious. Defensive player of the game, that's tougher. I'll probably go with Roy Robertson Harris just because of his run defense. He was really effective in the run game, but it's tough because like it just felt like nobody made a play, if that makes sense. Like nobody, not to say everybody performed badly, but nobody really stepped up, I thought, and had like a standout performance.
Right. My defensive game ball goes to Foye Oluokun, just because like he had 11 tackles on the day, but it was his fourth consecutive game with double-digit tackles. So like he just continues to be the heart and spine and whatever of Jacksonville's defense. I mean, Roy Robertson Harris's run defense has like significantly improved. I mean, he wasn't like bad all of last season, but he was inconsistent. So like again, like him and Foley have really picked up the slack with Devon Hamilton being out. But I've got the same offensive game ball as you. Like the offense might have gone scoreless a second straight week if they didn't have Travis Etienne. He accounted for 48% of their total yards.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I don't think there's anybody else to even really consider. And special teams, yikes. Not Brandon McManus, not anybody on the return coverage team. This is going to be a disgusting sentence that comes out of my mouth. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Logan Cook is like in the 16 to 20 range in EPA generated by punters this year. So, yeah, I saw. Yeah, that's right. Punter EPA, we've gotten there. Just like people are now complaining that the Jaguars don't do enough quarterback sneaks, because that's the problem with the offense. The quarterback built like a light pole isn't trying
like a light pole,
trying to cram it down the middle enough.
Built like one of those like dancing floaty things you see outside of car dealerships.
I want one of the skinniest quarterbacks in the NFL to also push behind one of the weakest centers in the NFL.
Right. They tried it 2 times in a row in week 1. Why are they going to try it again?
I literally had somebody on Twitter, like before this podcast started, get into it with me about that, and has now threatened to slap me at the stadium for simply replying yeah and yes to all of their tweets about it now. So
never changed, Sean.
No. So the Jags offense has been so disappointing that people are now upset about the lack of quarterback sneaks. That's where they're at. That's where they're at. Gus, we'll be back Friday to preview the Atlanta Falcons 9:30 kickoff. You got anything else for us?
No, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be 2 straight weeks of 2 straight Sundays of just a full day of football. So
Bliss.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. It'll be fun. But I'll talk to you Friday.
Being done with work by 3 p.m. on a Sunday, man, it's nice. Then again, I was basically done with work at 3 p.m. last Sunday. So.
Hey. Oh!
There we go. All right. Thank you all for joining us. We will be back Friday to preview the Atlanta Falcons.